Welcome back to another episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update. You know, our series that keeps you updated with our ever-changing industry. For those of you that have been watching the series for a while now, you know how this goes, but for those of you that are new, welcome. We'll be covering the latest in manufacturing, packaging, coding, sustainability, and much more. I'm your host Alexa, and today we'll discuss topics ranging from the latest cooling inflation trends and their impact on grocery and gas prices to the ongoing legal challenges facing the Trump administration's tariffs. We'll also dive into how farmers are cautiously navigating the uncertainties brought by the trade war with China, and wrap up with Walmart's plan to raise prices amid rising tariff costs despite solid first quarter sales. This past April, inflation in the US continued to cool, offering a temporary sigh of relief to consumers and businesses alike. According to the latest Consumer Price Index data, prices rose just 2.3% year over year, the slowest increase in over 4 years. On a month-to-month basis, prices nudged up only 0.2% following March's unexpected 0.1% drop, which marked the first monthly decline in 5 years. One of the most significant contributors to this easing inflation was a noticeable drop in food prices. Grocery costs fell by 0.4% from March to April, representing the steepest monthly decline since September of 2020. In a surprising turn, egg prices alone plummeted by 12.7%, the largest single-month drop in 41 years, though they still remain nearly 49% higher than they were a year ago. Fuel costs also played a role in driving prices down. Gasoline prices eased, with fuel oil dropping by 1.3%, helping to lower household energy expenses across the board. Meanwhile, other consumer goods like clothing and new vehicles, many of which are imported, either remained stable or even saw slight declines. Clothing prices dipped by 0.2% and new car prices remained unchanged. But despite the current calm, concerns are mounting about the long-term impact of newly imposed tariffs. Many experts suggest that the limited effect we're seeing now is only temporary. Laura Rosner-Warburton, co-founder of Macro Policy Perspectives, emphasized that it's early days for tariff effects. More will come in May, June, and July. There are plenty of price increases already scheduled and on the way. We're already seeing signs of this in a few sectors. Prices for computers, which usually trend downward due to rapid tech innovation, rose by 0.3% in April, hinting at the beginning of cost pressures. Similar patterns are showing up in categories like sporting goods and toys, both heavily dependent on imported materials. Even essential baby products like strollers and car seats are starting to reflect early signs of price hikes. This mild inflation reading may not hold for long. The recent 10% blanket tariff implemented on April 5th hasn't fully filtered through the system yet. Many companies anticipated the tariff changes and built up stockpiles to delay passing those costs on to consumers. But as those reserves run low in the coming months, everyday shoppers may begin to feel the impact on their wallets. Retailers like Walmart have already signaled their intent to raise prices in response to these economic pressures, foreshadowing broader shifts ahead. So while today's data brings a momentary sense of relief, the real test may be just around the corner, as businesses adjust and the full weight of trade policy changes takes hold. Moving on, the trade war tariffs imposed during the Trump administration are now facing a significant legal challenge, shaking up the landscape of US-China trade relations. A coalition of importers and manufacturers has filed a lawsuit against the US Trade Representative's use of Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, claiming the tariffs on over $370 billion of Chinese goods were imposed unlawfully and without proper congressional authorization. This lawsuit, filed in the US Court of International Trade, argues that the tariffs have inflicted substantial harm on American businesses and consumers. The coalition points to the sweeping 25% tariff applied to hundreds of products, which has driven up costs across many sectors reliant on Chinese imports. According to their complaint, these tariffs have disrupted supply chains, raised operational costs, and forced companies to increase prices, impacting competitiveness and profitability. One key legal contention centers on the USTR's alleged failure to follow the required procedures under Section 301, including inadequate investigations and lack of congressional consultation. The coalition asserts that the administration overstepped its authority and failed to comply with procedural mandates, setting a precedent for executive overreach in trade policy. Industry voices are weighing in on the lawsuit's potential impact. Importer and trade attorney John W. Smith said, "If successful, this challenge could lead to a rollback of these tariffs and significantly ease the burden on U.S. businesses." Meanwhile, the USTR has defended the tariffs as necessary measures to address unfair trade practices by China, emphasizing their role in protecting U.S. industries. The legal battle comes amid ongoing economic pressures such as inflation and rising costs, intensifying concerns about the tariffs' long-term effects. Recent reports show that tariffs have already increased prices for consumer goods by an average of 3.3%, contributing to inflationary trends. This case could be a pivotal moment for U.S. trade policy, potentially redefining the balance of power between the executive branch and Congress in tariff imposition. The outcome may influence future trade negotiations, supply chain decisions, and the overall direction of U.S.-China economic relations. As the case unfolds, businesses and policymakers alike are closely monitoring developments, knowing that the court's ruling will reverberate throughout the manufacturing, retail, and import-export sectors. Moving on, as the U.S.-China trade war continues, farmers across America are cautiously observing the situation, much like watching the weather, uncertain how the next move will affect their livelihoods. For Minnesota soybean farmer Dan Glessing, the trade tension have been a persistent background challenge, but not the sole driver of hardship. China, historically a major buyer, imported nearly $13 billion worth of U.S. soybeans in 2024. But tariffs have disrupted this vital market. Glessing explains, "Am I concerned about tariffs? Yeah, there's uncertainty that comes with that. But is the number one driving factor in these poor commodity prices the last 2 years? No." He points to other major influences, including adverse weather conditions and rising input costs, as equally significant pressures. The U.S. Department of Agriculture forecasts a mixed outlook. Corn exports are expected to increase by 3% in 2025, while soybean exports are projected to fall by 2%. However, increased domestic demand for soybeans could mitigate those losses and help push soybean prices up. In fact, soybean future rose by 4.5% recently, offering a small beacon of hope. From Tennessee, farmer Matt Griggs shares a similar cautious optimism, but underscores the trade war's lasting uncertainty. "The tariff impacts might be manageable now, but we're still waiting to see what the long-term effects will be." Both Griggs and Glessing stress the need for diversification in crop production to spread risk and better adapt to volatile markets. Farmers are also navigating other cost pressures such as rising fuel and fertilizer prices, which have increased overall operational expenses by approximately 7% year over year. This adds to the complexity of balancing profitability amid shifting trade dynamics. While a recent 90-day tariff truce between the U.S. and China has provided some relief, many farmers remain cautious, understanding that the path ahead is unpredictable. Their experience exemplifies the resilience required to endure in an industry heavily influenced by global political and economic forces. And we've made it to our final story. In a recent announcement, Walmart, the largest retailer in the U.S., revealed plans to increase prices on a range of products in response to the growing financial pressure from tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. Despite reporting solid first-quarter sales, the company has made it clear that it cannot continue to absorb these added costs without passing some of the burden onto consumers. Walmart reported a first-quarter profit of $4.45 billion, or 56 cents per share, down from $5.10 billion, or 63 cents per share during the same period last year. However, the retailer did beat analyst expectations on adjusted earnings per share, posting 61 cents compared to the predicted 58 cents. Revenue for the quarter rose by 2.5% to $165.61 billion, although this fell just short of analyst estimates. U.S. comparable sales increased 4.5% in the second quarter, signaling a slight slowdown in growth. Doug McMillon, Walmart's CEO, acknowledged the challenging environment, stating, "We will do our best to keep our prices as low as possible, but given the magnitude of the tariffs, even at the reduced levels announced this week, we aren't able to absorb all the pressures given the reality of narrow retail margins." His words highlight the difficult balancing act Walmart faces between maintaining competitive pricing and managing rising rising supply chain costs. John David Rainey, the company's chief financial officer, further explained that the scale of these tariffs exceeds what any retailer or supplier can absorb without raising prices for consumers. He indicated that noticeable price increases are expected to start appearing in late May and will likely accelerate through June. The tariffs have notably impacted product categories such as electronics and toys, where many items are imported from China. Groceries, too, have been affected with price increases seen in products like bananas, avocados, coffee, and roses. Items imported from countries including Costa Rica, Peru, and Colombia. To counterbalance these challenges, Walmart continues to source approximately 2/3 of its merchandise domestically. Groceries make up about 60% of Walmart's U.S. business, providing some insulation against tariff-related cost hikes. The retailer is also actively exploring alternative sourcing strategies and working closely with suppliers to manage and mitigate rising prices. Looking ahead, Walmart remains cautiously optimistic. The company expects second quarter sales growth between 3.5% and 4.5% and has maintained its full year guidance set earlier in February. Notably, Walmart's global e-commerce sales surged 22% in the first quarter, a promising sign that the retail giant is well positioned to navigate ongoing market uncertainties. This episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update is brought to you by our SNEED-PACK Small Box Auto Flat Folding Case Sealer. The SNEED-PACK CS30AF can seal up to 20 perfectly closed boxes per minute, 4 to 5 times faster than the average worker. Equipped with stainless steel rollers and air-tack cylinder-controlled folding mechanisms, it ensures a smooth and efficient sealing process. Setup is quick and easy. Just adjust the height and width using the cranks around the machine, power it on, and feed your boxes through. Say goodbye to error-prone packaging. The CS30AF automates flat folding and top and bottom sealing, eliminating most manual labor. Simply load your formed cases and let the machine do the rest. With the SNEED-PACK CS30AF, you can truly keep packaging simple. Like always, stay tuned for our next episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell down below to stay up to date with all of our great content, and let us know what topics you'd like to see us talk about here on the show. We look forward to hearing from you all. Bye everyone.